What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Nicotina Show. I'm joined by Nerd Cosa Nostra, also known as Sean. What's going up, man? What's going on, man? What's going up? What's going on?
Man? Not much, man. How you doing?
Good. It actually, today was the first day that it was hot outside in my area of California. It was really warm today. Now, obviously, where you live, it's warm like almost all year round. So, you know, I'm sure on most days.
We're already in the 90s this week.
I was gonna say the nice weather comes and goes pretty quickly down there. And I'm sure you have the AC cranked in the Xavier's mansion that you live in.
My AC runs pretty much year round, and my temperature stays in the house around 68, 69 solid. Does not waver up or down. So
well, I mean, I would imagine it like your PG&E bill is, or not PG&E, but your electric bill isn't as they don't charge you as much as they charge you over here, because I mean you have to have air going, otherwise you'll die.
Correct. And we also invested in solar panels, which in our state, which allows us to, if you produce energy, so to speak, you can then sell. We are able to sell that back to the electric company. So every month we're in the negative as far as what we owe.
That's
so we
awesome.
then get that money like given back to us, direct deposited or whatever. And that, again, that's keeping our temperature 68, 69. For us, summer, I mean, we're getting into it right now, and it will last until August, early September. I remember a couple of years ago, it got to 128 was the highest a couple of years ago we had here.
Holy shit! And it 128.
128.
You're like melting on the sidewalk.
Well, that's the crazy thing is a lot of stores, shopping mall areas, things like that. They've laid a lot of tar down just as a sound barrier. And when you walk in these parking lots, you can feel how soft the tar is. You're practically like stepping in it and leaving like impressions.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. So when it gets that hot, you don't leave the house. And
fuck
if you do,
that, dude, fuck that. If I saw temperatures of 128, this is what I would say.
Hell no.
Like fuck that.
Otherwise it's pretty consistent. 117 to 120 is our summer.
Sounds like the score of a basketball game. 117 to 120. But anyway, okay, so last week we watched Xmen 97 episode 4. Now this was a different episode. I mean, the first 3 episodes were heavily connected and had a really tight and great story that they were telling. In episode 4, it was a little bit different. We got to see Jubilee and Sunspot take on Mojo, who had come through because he wanted to show them off as a game, to his fans and get his ratings up. And it was cool to see Mojo again. And I was like, why does he look so skinny for? It turns out, he was just I guess he was just sucking it in, because all of a sudden he was like, brah, remember?
Yep. And they called it the Motendo.
Motendo.
So the episode was cut into 2 parts. It was called Motendo and /Life Death Part 1. So the first 12-13 minutes we followed Jubilee and Roberto into this video game world, this beta version of this video game by Mojo. Ultimately had to fight their way out of it. But we did get introduced to an older version of Jubilee. Ultimately, at first we didn't know who was helping them, but then we found out that's who it was helping them. And then the Spiral then came in and helped send them back, because Jubilee, the one we know so far from episodes 1 through 3, the younger version, wanted to stay there. She wanted to stay in this world, and that older version of her talked her out like, hey, you don't want to stay here. You want to go back. And then, of course, we saw I thought it was pretty cool. The little callbacks. The Motendo looked like the Sega Genesis. The little cartridge had the old school Xmen video game tag on it.
And what's funny about that game is that the main villain is Mojo.
I think maybe in part in the second one. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It is one of the villains in the first game, but so is Magneto.
I thought he was the main villain. Yeah, Magneto as well. Yeah.
I
thought he was the main one, but anyway, I know that Mojo was in the
yes,
game.
Yeah, because the second one was X-Men. I think Clone Wars was the second one. But I had the first game. Yeah, it was pretty.
That game
pretty
was
fun
hard
game.
as fuck.
Yeah, you could play Wolverine,
Gambit,
and oh, what's his name?
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler. Thank you. Yeah, I always played Nightcrawler because you could teleport from spot to spot. So you really had to pick your character correctly in the game. But
there was more characters than that, though, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think there was like one or two more. But I always played.
I thought Cyclops
as a kid, though. I always loved
but
Wolverine and
yeah. Every time I played the game, I was like Wolverine. Fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, but he was hard to win with because he can't shoot anything. You have to go over and hit him. You know. But you know what was cool about the game was that I remember. I forgot what button it was. Can retract or or what do you call it? What's the opposite of retract? But like you can retract your claws, back and forth.
Yeah.
I used to do it all the time. Just because I could. Like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, see, like I said, I like Nightcrawler because again, you had to use Nightcrawler in some levels.
What's up, Ruthie?
What's up, Ruthie? You had to use Nightcrawler in some levels because you had to teleport a certain distance, and the other characters couldn't make like the jumps from one side to the other. So you had to be very careful on who you were picking to play the game because you wouldn't be able to pass the levels. So
because you can kill them off too, which that part sucked. It kind of actually reminded me of the Ninja Turtles game in the first Ninja Turtles from Nintendo. That was a brutal game, and that game was hard too because dude, like the turtles would die, like they turned to little turtles.
Yeah. The underwater levels were the worst. We had those little
electric seaweed.
Yeah, the electric seaweed.
I was like, fuck, damn it, he's dead. Fuck, yeah. Donatello died. God damn it.
I was rage quitting games before it was cool. I mean,
and here's the thing too: is like, look, we talk about these shows, we talk about these comics and these movies, but it's like, man, when we were kids, you had Ninja Turtles where your favorite characters are dying left and right, and then it's like, and when it came to these shows, if you didn't catch the episode, you're fucked.
Yeah, there was.
Good luck finding a replay of that episode. You're not going to find that anytime soon.
Yeah, there was no. Let me just jump on the old YouTube and.
YouTube didn't exist. There was nothing like that. Nothing.
No, I remember not getting the internet until I was probably. Well, the internet really wasn't like pretty widespread. When you used to get those AOL disc in the mail, like
yeah, I remember those.
Okay, so we both have that point of reference. So that was probably 1994, 93, 94.
Yeah.
But even then, the internet isn't what it is today. I mean, it was primarily chat rooms and just basic, news, but it wasn't anything that was really kept up to date. But
the death of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, dude, it was rough, man. I was like, dude, I did
like the arcade version of the game.
Oh, yeah, that was a good.
That was way better.
And then there was they had that one, and then they had there was another one too where it was more arcade style, and then you're on these surfboards at one point. And those were fun. I was like, I had one of those ones too when we got to like Sega Genesis, but the first one, fucking brutal, dude. It was just, and then you had all these random enemies that you were like, I've never seen these enemies before in my entire life. Like the guy with the chainsaw and like those weird like jumping like things where they're just like legs, It was just like, what the fuck? The fire guy. I was like, what episode was that? And then every so often you run into an actual bad guy, which was like Bebop or Rocksteady, and then you kind of go from there. The arcade version was sick. Yeah,
agree.
I love that one.
Yeah, I think they did, as far as turtle games for Nintendo. I think there was 3 or 4 of them, but the arcade one was by far in my opinion, was the best one because that first one was brutal. Like I said, I was rage quitting at like 6-7 years old.
Oh yeah, dude, it was super brutal, and god damn, dude, I'm going on Twitch to find the link, and like, there's so many Twitch streams where it's just girls like half naked. It's so bad, dude. Oh my god.
Yeah, just maybe that's maybe that's their step into OnlyFans. I don't know. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and post the link in the chat. If you want to follow us and watch the entire episode of X-Men 97, episode 5,
click on this link and follow us over on Twitch. If you're watching on X, you don't have to do anything. Just stay where you're at, and you'll be able to watch our pre-show, the entire episode, and our post show as well. So thank you to everyone who is watching on Twitch, and make sure you follow my account on Twitch, because we're going to be doing this every week until we get to the end of X-Men 97. And I'm glad that Batkid's journey through the Omniverse, that's the first time we've gotten messages from viewers on X. So if you're on X, feel free to leave a comment or engage in the conversation. We would love to hear from you. Okay,
so definitely. That was I know I sidetracked us a little bit on the video game bit.
Well, not really, though, because the he was talking about the arcade version, and I was gonna actually bring this up, is that the X-Men arcade version, or the arcade game, that was
great.
Bad.
That was a great game.
That was a great game.
It's just crazy how times have changed. You just those types of things.
You made history. Thank you.
Those things are just such a rarity to find, especially in their original in the original cabinets where they haven't been customized or altered too much. It's just, those were the good times.
It's crazy too, because like my mother-in-law bought this arcade machine, right? Because she wanted to play like Pac-Man or some shit, but it's one of those ones where you can it comes preloaded with like a ton of different arcade games. And one of them is X-Men. It has Ninja Turtles, and dude, and my kids love playing it, dude. It's great. Imagine the Earth where I chose to not comment on anything. Probably sucks for you guys. Yeah, I know. It'd be a much more lonelier place without you. So, guys, we are a few minutes away from X-Men 97 Episode 5. So, in the previous episode, in Episode 4, we saw that Storm had partnered up with Forge, and he was going to help her get her abilities back. And he actually put her in a machine to try and do that, and he failed. She didn't get her powers back. She tried to use her powers, and they weren't there. So she was like, oh, no. And then in the process of doing so, Forge fell in love with her and confessed his love to her, which I was like, dude, you're moving real quick here. But it's an animated show. I get it. But I was like, God damn. And he also revealed, too, and which is actually canon in the comics, that he was the one who created the necklaces that remove your mutant abilities. So
the collar, the inhibitor.
Collars, thank you.
Inhibitor collars, I think is what they're called. Yep.
And so he's definitely going to use that technology to reverse the effects of those inhibitor collars, because essentially they took those collars, the Friends of Humanity, and they had a concentrated dose of it that would remove the abilities of a mutant.
And that rifle, the rifle that they used,
from the guy from the FOH. And so he's definitely going to use his technology to reverse those the effects, so that she gets her abilities back. And that's sort of what happens in the comics as well. So they're definitely sticking to the comic storyline. And I think it's really cool because, if you read The Trial of Magneto, that leads directly into this story where she loses her abilities and then runs into Forge and does all this. So they really thought this out, and they thought of ways to really connect the storyline to the stories that were in the comics. And I think so far they've done an amazing job at telling this long-form story with X-Men 97. I've really enjoyed the show so far. But at the end of Episode 4, on the second part, we saw the arrival of the adversary. And Sean, do you want to talk a little bit about who the adversary is? Because even when I saw it, I was like, who the fuck is this? And I've read a lot of X-Men comics. I had to go look it up. I was like, okay, yeah, now I know who he is. But go ahead.
So the last 11 minutes. So the other part of the episode was called Life, Death Part 1. Side note, we will not be seeing Life, Death Part 2 tonight. That will be Episode 6. So that will be next week's episode. But so as you just mentioned, this owl, we see this owl come up a couple times, or Storm sees it kind of, I don't want to say stalking her, but kind of following her. Maybe that's a better, nicer way to put it. Yeah. And so we come to find out, actually, it's adversary, and it's actually a demon within we'll call it the X-Men verse, so to speak. So adversary and Forge have a history together.
Yes,
so
they do.
So Forge fought in the Vietnam War, okay, and his company was completely annihilated by, again, and this is all comic book, okay. So I
This
don't
is
want
all
anyone to
lore.
think that this is coming from the show that we've seen or we'll see
Yeah,
this in the show. This is
this is
strictly,
straight lore from the
yeah,
comics.
okay. So his company is annihilated, and so he uses his heritage to summon adversary, to then use adversary to destroy the Vietnamese who killed his company. However, in doing this, he realized, yeah, this probably wasn't the best thing, and then gets rid of adversary, or at the point called demon. It was just a demon. Eventually takes on the name of adversary. So then eventually what ends up happening was decades later, where we kind of see the story with Storm and Forge together. Adversary then comes back, and the reason he's able to come back is because since Forge summoned him, it kind of left an open foothold portal between
Yeah,
Adversary's world and Earth, or the Earth that we know where the X-Men are to be. So what ends up happening is he finds Storm and Forge and banishes them to his realm, leaves them there, and then goes back to where he found them. So we know they're in Dallas, Texas, and we know they're in Dallas, Texas, even in the X-Men '97 show. We know that from the last episode. So he goes back to that time and then becomes a villain to the X-Men and starts
yeah,
fighting the X-Men. And then ultimately, what has to happen is the X-Men have to agree with Forge in order to, and some the X-Men in the comics died in that story in order to get adversary banished back to his realm by Forge. Now, all that to say is, and again, that was a very high level S1 Cliff Notes type rundown. I think we might see some of that. We could see some of that because we've already seen adversary come down as this big owl attacks Storm, which we believe not to be real. I think I kind of interpreted it like it was a vision she was seeing. I don't know if it was actually real. We'll find out though. Where we could see another villain come into play, right? We could see we've seen Sinister, we've seen Mojo. Now we're going to see Adversary come in and start fighting the X-Men. I think that's a very good possibility.
yeah. I think so. I mean, I think definitely when he traps Forge and Storm in his realm, I think he's definitely going to be taking on the X-Men probably towards the end of this episode, because we know that this episode doesn't exactly focus on this story that we saw
Yeah.
at the end of the episode, because this one was called Life Death Part 1, and we get Life and Death Part 2 next week. While this episode follows more of the storyline of Geonosia being accepted into the UN. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the world accepts Geonosia into the UN.
Yeah.
You know, a haven for mutants being a part of the UN is going to be something that is definitely going to, I think, strike a lot of nerves with people who are definitely anti mutant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's going to be cool to see. It makes you wonder if the Friends of Humanity are going to come back. There's going to be some villain that the X-Men are going to take on, but I think that at the end of the day, they're going to end up having to take on the adversary, who feels that, like, yeah, now that I have them trapped, I can do whatever I want now.
Well, and I wonder if we're going to see Executioner again, because Executioner was the one, and I don't, I was trying to think back because I tried to go, I tried to take some notes in as far as what we've seen thus far. So when we saw Executioner last was in episode 2, using the rifle on,
Yeah.
was trying to use it on Magneto, ended up using it on Storm. Storm jumped in the path of the shot.
Yeah, she
That
took a bullet for him.
Yeah, where she lost her powers. And then we don't see Executioner after that. We didn't see him in episode 3. Obviously didn't see him in episode 4. So I'm wondering if, and I don't recall in episode 1 or the first part 2 where it ever really explained how how they were able to manipulate the technology of the collar into a weaponized for like a weapon, like a rifle, like that he used, right? So I'm wondering if we're going to see that come up again. Like maybe in the last 3 episodes where those 8, 9, and 10, tolerance and extinction, are all 3 parts. So I'm wondering if he's going to come up again using this weapon and trying to, take the powers from another X-Men, or maybe one of the villains. Who knows? Maybe I
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you saw Sinister get shot with it, right? I mean,
Oh my god, I know. Well, so I think as for Executioner, I don't think we'll see him again. I think because of the events that happened at the end of what was it, episode 2, or was it episode 3? Episode 3. I think that he'll be in custody because I mean, like he was there in front of
yeah,
the
episode 2.
panel.
You had it right.
Yeah,
It's
episode
episode
2.
2.
I can't imagine he's still walking free right now. I would imagine he's behind bars unless they break him out, which is entirely possible.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, but again, it's just one of those things where it's like they kind of set it up to where, hey, I have this weapon, it can take away your powers.
Yeah,
it just seemed kind of got used once, and then again we haven't seen him, heard from him, nothing about him. I think it's probably made a disservice on the character where he could have potentially played a bigger role in working with some of the other villains because he has this technology that they could possibly use
Beast
as
could
well.
be talking to him too, like, "Hey, how did you do this? Like, what what was the method you used?" So guys, we're about 9 minutes away from watching X-Men 97 episode 5. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you switch over and follow us on Twitch or follow us on X. If you're watching on Twitch or X, you have to do nothing. Just stay where you're at, and you'll be able to watch our pre-show, the watch party episode, and then our post-show, which we'll talk about the episode as soon as the episode concludes. So the other thing too with this show is that I really like how they're introducing the villains because it really feels like I'm watching like a live action comic, because in the comics, like some of these storylines only go for about like 1 or 2 issues and then boom, they're on the next villain, and I like that because it keeps it going, it keeps it fresh, and you get reoccurring villains. And so the fact that they've gone as far as to take Madeline Pryor and have her go full Goblin Queen, that was fucking cool.
Yeah.
Seeing Mojo make an appearance, that was cool. I don't think he died in that episode, but he was definitely knocked out.
Yeah.
And then now seeing the adversary as well. I mean, they're tapping into villains and storylines that I did not think that they were going to actually really dive into. Like towards the end of episode 1, I really felt like, okay, so this is going to focus on the X-Men dealing with Magneto. That's going to be the big storyline that moving forward. But no, instead they threw in the whole Madeline Pryor, Mr. Sinister, now Mojo, and then the adversary. I love how they're just introducing and bringing these villains right into the story. And they're really just kind of going after it. Like, hey, I don't give a shit. I'm going to go crap about build up. These are, the next villain's coming right now. You know what I mean? Bam. And I just like the flow and the tempo of the show. Now, obviously, look, if it's live action, it's going to be a little bit different because you can't just kind of jump from one point to another. It would just be, it would seem super choppy. But in animation, you definitely can.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we saw was the techno-organic virus, right? So Nathan got it. And now,
Nathan got it.
And then it went with, and now Bishop took him to the future, right? I mean, they even threw that in there as well.
You got to figure that that's going to come back into play, if not this season, then next season, because
probably next season. I'm guessing season 2. I don't think we're going to see that play out the rest of this one. So
I still think that when he went back to the future, not to that no pun intended, that he's going back to see Forge, because Forge was the one who initially sent him to the past in the original, in the comics, and also in Days of Future Past in the animated series. So I feel like he's going back to meet up with Forge to see if he could figure out how to help him. And then, of course, obviously he's gonna later become Cable, which I do. It seems more likely that we're gonna see him in season 2. But it's crazy to think about, like, everything that we're talking about, right? All these characters, all these villains, all these side stories. We're talking about Cable, we're talking about Forge, talking about Days of Future Past.
Yep.
It goes to show you that, when the MCU does or does not, whatever they tend to do, whatever they choose to do after Secret Wars, is that by leaning heavily into the X-Men, you have so much lore and story and content that you could really build off of. And I think that X-Men is going to be one of those one of those franchises that you could build so much off of this.
And I think for live action, it's time to see some of these villains live action, like Sinister. Bring him in, right? I think he would be, or Adversary. I think those would be great villains to introduce, because to your point, there's so much content from a comics graphic novels perspective around
Absolutely.
around X-Men. We don't need to stick to the same Xavier versus Magneto story, or I mean, I know we didn't. I mean, as far as the first trilogy,
But not
and
only
then
that though, it's like I would love to see the MCU tackle their own way of doing Dark Phoenix, which I think they should give it some time, then do that. But I mean, in live action, we've never seen the Shi'ar Empire. We've never
nope.
seen Lalandra. We've never seen so many different aspects of the X-Men universe or X-Men comics in live action. So there's so much you can do there.
But
But
my
on top of
worry,
that,
though, not to cut you off, but my worry
no,
with
go ahead.
that is I don't want them to think, oh, well, we need to do an X-Men prequel 10 episode TV show to bring, let me look. So imagine if they would have done Loki first, the TV show, before they ever did the Thor movies. I don't think that would have been necessary. Give me the Thor
No, no,
movies.
no, no.
So I don't want to see, we have all this great content, we have all this great reference material. We're hoping they're gearing up to bring X-Men back into live action along with a bunch of other of the characters. Don't give me a bunch of setups before you give me, all of like what the animated shows give me. Just give me this like right away. We know who these characters, a lot of who these characters are. We don't need to understand a lot of the backstory. And if you want to do backstory, you can do it kind of like what they did here with in episode 3 with Jean and the clone, which turned out to be Madeline Pryor, right? They did some of those flashbacks, right, to kind of show what that story was. We didn't have to spend a whole episode setting that up to then give us episode 3.
I think that when it comes to the animated series, I think they're going to tackle. This is just a guess, but I feel like they're going to tackle storylines and villains that perhaps they feel like, you know what, I don't know how this villain would do as the main villain in a live action movie. That's why you're seeing Adversary, you're seeing the Goblin Queen, you're seeing Mojo, these characters that maybe in live action
Mojo would probably be the toughest.
It may seem over the top or a little too science fiction. But you're gonna see it in the animated series because they can tackle that with much more ease. And I also believe too is that when you move into live action, obviously you're not going to get the trial of Magneto because you've already done that in the animated series. You can't just regurgitate that again once the live action starts up. And we also know the fact that they're planning, supposedly the reports are is that they're planning to start production of the X-Men live action movie at the end of in Q4 of this year, which I don't see how it's even fucking possible because
that's gonna be tough.
Well, not only that, but like, why would you start production on a live action X-Men movie when you haven't even gotten like if Secret Wars was coming out like this year or next year, I kind of get that, but if you're going to jump right into the X-Men before you even get the Secret Wars, that's going to be pretty crazy, which tells me that when Secret Wars does come around, you're not going to, like, you may not see James Marsden and Halle Berry and all them. Instead, you might see this new X-Men team that they're developing at the end of this year. So that's interesting to see which way they're going to go with that. But either way, I'm just excited to see X-Men. This is my favorite, this and Spider-Man are my favorite. And I think that's the other, obviously that's the other one they're going to lean into very heavily is Spider-Man. As they move into the next phase of the MCU. Let's see. No, it's not up.
So we have about less than a minute. So real quick, this episode is titled "Remember It." My prediction is this is going to be on Jean, the real Jean that was left behind in episode 3 because the clone Madeline Pryor left. I'm thinking this might be the real Jean now trying to remember everything that she might have missed out on. That's just my guess, just based on the title. What do you think? What do you think?
I think so. Because it's called Remember It. So we may even get the story of how Jean got apprehended by Sinister.
That'd be They definitely haven't explained that yet, and she obviously didn't remember when she was taken.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me refresh over here. See if it's up yet.
No,
not yet.
Not on my end. No.
No. We have 1 minute apparently. According to my computer, we have 1 minute left before we head into episode 5, and then once the episode does start,
it's uploaded.
There it is.
Yep.
Remember it. Okay, here we go,
Oh,
guys.
this one's a bit longer. It's 36 minutes, so it's a bit longer than last week's.
How long was last week's?
It's not. It's like 8 minutes longer, but still, it's
Oh,
8 minutes
I
of
see.
content.
There we go. Hopefully, it's not 7 minutes of credits.
Trailers, credits.
Like
yeah.
what do you call it? Like Loki. All right, guys, we are gonna watch episode 5 of X-Men 97. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm gonna have to end the stream now because YouTube does not allow me to stream the episode when I'm live. But if you're on Twitch or on X, stay where you're at because we're about to watch X-Men 97 episode 5. And for everyone who's watching on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you again next week for the pre-show of X-Men 97.